Hello, I'm Crafty Patty. Thanks for tuning in. I know I normally have a video out for you about every 2 weeks. I'm a little behind this time because I had to take my sewing machine in for repair. But while I was there, I just had to buy this one. So I've been learning how to use this, and so that's the delay in my videos. So for this video, I'm combining how to make a nice little drawstring bag and a little bit of an introduction to the PFAFF sewing machine, because I think it's such a wonderful machine. I just had to share some of its features. So you get to learn how to make a bag while learning the machine as well. So the reason I made this is because I tend to not be too kind with my masks, and they end up getting into my pocket or just thrown into my purse. So I thought I really needed a more sanitary place to keep my masks. So that's why I've made this bag, so I can just pop it in here, whether it be a medical one or a homemade one. I've got them in my bag, nice and clean, and so I always know where they are, and I don't feel bad about throwing this in my purse. So let's get started, and I'm going to show you how I made these darling little bags. This is the perfect time to use up some smaller pieces of fabric that you have around. And I have this panel that I've had for some time, and I'm going, I'll use it for something because I got it for a good price. So by cutting the piece of fabric I need for my bag, that's part of the panel. And it's made these cute little bags like this. This one here, I actually chose to try to do some embroidery on it. I've got a brand new PFAFF machine, so I had to try out some of the creative stitches. So there you go, that's me just experimenting with my machine. This fabric here is actually a broadcloth that I can use for the lining. And this one here is 100% quilting cotton. And this one here, I chose to just use up some scraps and do some strip quilting and add a bunch of different fabrics together. And again, experimenting on my new machine for some embroidery, which is kind of fun. So that's why I added some solids in here, just to have some fun with some decorative stitching. And if you do decide to have some fun with some decorative stitching, then my PFAFF does tell you that it needs to have some interfacing on the back side. So I've got just some basic, real light interfacing. This one happens to be an iron-on because you can see the dots on it. And then the rough side is what you'd iron on top of your back side of your fabric. So it just gives it some support if you want to do some embroidery. And for your drawstring, you can choose to use ribbon, cording, macrame cord, whatever you have around will do. So once you've chosen your pieces of fabric, you'll want to cut a lining piece and an outer piece measuring 6.5 inches or 16.5 centimeters by 13.5 inches or 34.3 centimeters. So let's start with our lining fabric. You're going to want to place right sides together, and we're going to take that to the sewing machine, and we're going to be sewing down one side completely, and the other side we're going to sew down, but we're going to leave a space for turning. And here's my new PFAFF sewing machine. It's a quilt expression. Not that I just do quilting. This machine will do absolutely everything. I don't have an ad on here like selling this machine. It's just, this is what I chose for a few different reasons. The one reason is that this presser foot will lift up really high. So you can get really large items under here, and I do make rope bowls and rope baskets, so this is a bonus for that. The other reason is that it has the free arm, and I do a lot of sewing using a free arm, and that's what we're going to be using today. So you'll need that if you want to make the little bags that I'm making today with you. And the other reason I liked this machine is because it does have an extension for sewing those beautiful rope bowls and baskets that we sew. Just a little bit of a heads up, I've only owned this machine for a couple days. I've been trying to learn all these bells and whistles. I'm not used to it, but it's amazing what this machine will do. So bear with me. If it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, you're probably right. Probably don't. I probably haven't figured it out yet, but we're going to still have fun. And we're going to make this bag together. You can probably get away with not pinning your sides, but if you choose to, by all means, throw a couple pins in the sides. When I'm working on projects like this, I don't want to have to cut off my seams afterwards, so I always use the side of my presser foot as a guide along the edge of my fabric, and that's the seam allowance I will be making, which is approximately 1/4 inch. Now my sewing machine should do a set stitch here to hold it, a holding stitch. So I'll see if that works. And it did. You can see it went back there. And now I can continue on and we'll sew down the rest here. And this machine has all these locking stitches, so if I press this, it will lock in place. And then if I press this, it's going to cut my thread. So just so you know that I'm touching these, and that's what's happening when you see my machine do its thing. And that has just cut the thread. I wasn't actually planning on this being a sewing machine tutorial. We're supposed to be making a bag. But this has so many neat features, like I can't help but not show you. So if I want to put my presser foot down, it will hit the fabric and I'm going, oh, well, that's not quite where I wanted it to be. I hit it once more and it lifts the presser foot just slightly up so I can adjust my fabric. So the needle's coming down exactly where I want it to be, and then down it goes again and I'm ready for sewing. And I'm going to stop here. So I'm just going to lock this in place. And then I want to just lift that up a bit. I'm going to move this along because I want to leave about a 2-inch spacing here. And then I'm going to start again sewing about here. So I'll just cut those threads, and that's my opening for turning on that side. I noticed on one of the first bags I've made that where the drawstring comes through, I noticed that it was sometimes pulling my raw edge forward, like so, and also inside I could see the liner, the raw edge. So I wanted to reinforce that. Now, it will stay okay by itself, but if you want a more professional bag, then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to reinforce, and I'll show you what I did. So to reinforce my seams, I've lined up my presser foot gap to my seam, but I don't want my needle to sew right into the ditch here. I want it to sew to the side of it. So again, sorry, this isn't supposed to be a machine tutorial, but I can't help but show you these cool things. This is showing me that my stitch line is going to be right down the middle of my presser foot, but I don't want that. So I'm going to choose this little icon over here, and it tells me right now it's sitting at 0, but I don't want it to sit at 0. I want it to come over, let's say about to 2.5. And now my needle is going to sew on the other side of this. Perfect, right? Isn't that a neat feature? And the reason it's back stitching or setting the stitch all by itself is because of this little guide here. I can set it to lock in here. I can get it to lock in at the bottom, and I can get it to preset to have the threads cut as well. Right now I've just got it set so it's just going to lock at the beginning. Here we go. And just be careful not to stitch into your other seam on the other side. You want to just keep pulling that back so it doesn't catch. And I'll just sew down for a couple inches. And if you want to do any pivot work, then we have also a needle down button. That will bring the needle down and lift the presser feet. So I can now turn and then press her foot down. Sew a bit to get to the other side here. It's automatically lifted the presser foot so I can turn again. See, I don't have any presser bar on the back of my sheen. I have to do it by my controls. And I'm so used to having a presser foot bar back there, but I don't have that anymore. So I'm learning how to do it this way. Presser foot down, and I'll just sew to the end. And that has reinforced my lining, and do the same for your other side. Now you don't have to do this, but it really bugged me on this bag when I could see it poking through and it didn't look finished. Your choice though. And now for the outer bag, folding right sides together, and you can choose to pin in place if you like. I'm using a unique creative pin. One end is for washout. It's in blue, so that'll wash out when you wash it. And this one is air erasable, so it'll only last as long as you finish your sewing project, and then the marking will be gone. So I'm just going to use that to make some markings on our fabric so we know how far to sew down. And I'm just going to use my sewing knitting gauge here, and I'm just measuring from the top of my fabric, and I'm measuring down 1 inch. So I'm going to stop sewing right here. Then I'm going to leave a gap for 1/2 inch, and I will start sewing down from here. So we're sewing 1 inch, leave a 1/2 inch, and then continue sewing down to the bottom. And so we've got our 1 inch, 1/2 inch gap, and you can just come in and clip that thread. Okay, and do exactly the same for the other side. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did for the lining fabric. I'm going to be opening this up, and I can use actually my little presser here. Just enough to open up the seam here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to reinforce this. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to come right to the bottom of the opening here, and then come across and come up the other side. And the same for the other side. This one's been nicely reinforced all along, and that will keep that seam nice and flat. And I'll do the same for this side. I never showed you what I was using, this handy little tool by Alex Anderson. On this end, it has an area that you can use to press open your seams, and then you don't have to go to your ironing board and use your iron. You can do it right at your sewing machine. Inside here, you have a seam ripper, and on the other end, you've got the corner for turning your corners, and then inside there, you have a stiletto. A handy little 4-in-1 tool, which I'm really enjoying. Now let's reverse our outer fabric so it's right side out. And I can take my little turner tool and poke that up into my corners. So that nicely poked out. And then our outer bag is going to go over top of that. So it's right sides to right sides. So we're just going to pop this bag right inside our lining. All right, so this is on the outside, this is the right side, and this is the right side. So we're going to match up our side seams, and we can pin those in place. Now go around to your other side seam and match that one up next. And now the best thing to do is, if you're working on 2 different fabrics, is take your fingers and give it a bit of a pull in here. This will even out the amount of fabric that's here and here in case you have a little bit of extra, and then you won't get the gapping or a little pucker. So really give it a pull, hold with your fingers, and then pin in the middle. Once you've got that one done, you can pin in the middle of those 2 pins. And the same for the other side. And this is going to be when you want to take off your sides to expose your free arm. And now we can take our little bag and we can pop it right over our free arm, and it makes it so much easier. And just continue to sew all the way around. And now we're ready to turn it to the right side. Here's our opening that we left. And I like to just grab a portion of my bag, give a little turning tool, and then bring that through the opening like so, just to get it started. And then once I've got it started, I can just keep pulling it out. And there we have. Turn to the right side. I'm just going to use my little turner here, poke out the corners. I want it nicely pressed because then I'll have this nicely closed, and then I can top stitch close to the edge to close up our little opening here. Or you can choose to hand stitch if you prefer. And I'm just going to use my pen again so I can see where my opening is. It's right here, and I need to sew down to here. And now that we've got our opening closed, we can just push our lining inside our outer fabric. Push it down inside. I'm going to use my little turner again just to poke up that lining up to the corners. So it's nice and smooth in there. And then I'm going to take this to the ironing board again, and I'm going to give it a really nice pressing so these seams are nice and even and open. And the side seams are usually a little bit bulkier, so I like to pin those ones before I do any top stitching. But the ironing should do a good job on the rest of it. And we're going to place that right over our free arm. And again, I like to use the edge of my presser foot as a guide to bring along the edge of my fabric, but I don't want it sewing right into the middle here. That would be a large top stitching. So again, with this machine, I can move my needle over. So I'm going to choose to move this way over to probably about 3.5. And I don't know if you can see that needle moving at the same time. I'll move my arm here, or you can hear it anyways. So you can see it moving here, and the needle is actually physically moving over. And around we go. And we've done our top stitching. Now we want to form our casing. So we need to stitch above our hole and below the hole. So let's put that on our free arm again. I'm going to move this back into the middle again. Now I'm looking to see where my opening is, where my needle will come down, and that'll be right on top of where my opening is. And I've got a guide on my machine here at the 5/8 inch mark, and I'm going to use that to follow along so I keep a nice straight line around. Here's my opening, so I want to make sure I'm sewing past my opening. And so now I've got another mark I can follow on my machine, which is 3.5, and I will start right there. Back to the start. And then just go around and clip off any threads that you've missed here and there. And then we'll put our drawstring in and we'll be all done. And just to change it up, because I've done a ribbon drawstring and a cording, I'm going to use 3mm macrame cord this time. So I'm just going to tie a knot in the end of this, just because this is twisted cord, not braided, and it does tend to ravel. So I'll just put a pin into the end of that. I'm going to take off some of this bulk so it's easier for threading. And let's find our little opening here on the side here, and we'll pop it in there and we'll go all the way around. When you get to the seam here, you might have to fiddle a little bit to get to where it's actually going through, but keep going till you get to the first opening. And there we are. Make sure that you open your bag up the whole way before you cut that off. Tie a knot. So let's take this pin out first. And then we'll tie a knot close to the edge here. And right up to the side. And pull that nice and tight. And make a knot in your string again, or whatever you're using. If you don't have something that ravels out a lot, then you don't have to worry about making a knot, but this is really ravelly and the pin just might not stay in it. So that's why I'm tying a knot. You started on this side, and now we'll start on this side. And go around again. And we're back to our beginning. Pull pull it all the way through. Again, make sure it's open before you cut that off. And again, tie a knot. And I've already tied a knot in this one. I'm going to tie a knot in this one, just to prevent it from raveling all the way out. And again, one on this one. And then of course, when you pull both sides, you've got a nice cinched in bag. Now, earlier in the video, I talked about how I was having a lot of fun doing some embroidery work and decorative stitches on the PFAFF machine. So just as a little bonus, I thought, well, let's just go over and we'll do one with you, just so you can see how this machine performs. I've looked through quite a few of the decorative stitches, and I've been picking up ones that I like, and I thought I would try this one with you. So I'm going to choose this stitch here, and it shows you on the panel here exactly how it is going to look. It's going to go outside of our presser foot area, so it's actually going to move a little differently than just staying in our presser foot area. And it shows me with this little green cross where the stitch is going to start. So I know that it's going to travel further to the right than it is to the left. So I need to position that with my fabric in the right area, so I try to get it in between. We'll see how I do because I haven't tried the stitch before, still learning. It's also telling me that I need to use my number 8 foot, and this is telling me that I need to have interfacing, which I already do. I put that on the back of this one, so I've already done that. So let's see how this goes. So I do need to remove this foot because it's telling me I need the number 8 foot. So I better put the right foot on here. Okay, wish me luck. I've positioned this so I'm not dead center because the stitch is going to form this way a bit more. I think I might have to go just a little bit more to the left. I'm just guessing because I've never done this one before. So here we go. I'm kind of just letting it do its own thing, but just trying to keep it kind of straight. So I tried to get just a little bit too close. This is things I have to still learn. So I'm just going to pick that out with my seam ripper and get that out of there because it's puckering it up a little bit. And there you have it. That's a fun little stitch. I didn't do too bad. It could have been, I don't know. Could have been maybe a little bit more in the middle there, but I think just for learning, I didn't do too bad, huh? So there you go, another fun little feature of this machine. And here's the finished bag that I had the strips of fabric that I joined together. And then here's the front of the embroidery that we did together on the machine. And there's the back side. There's a cute little bag for masks or whatever you like.